Hey darts fans, Timo Newman here, the transporter. Welcome to the good ship Undarted Waters, and here we are at the final video of this series, The Secrets of the Dartboard, and the topic today is unleashing Tony, our trusty friend, the blindfold player who can throw 100 million darts a second. We're going to unleash Tony at the entire dartboard, and I did a Tony shot in his honor, just random, although maybe not random, but a kind of a random looking shot ending in this underrated piece here, the treble 4. As one of my commentators said, Bart, August the 20th forevermore will be known as treble 4 day. So what have I got here? 25, 28 and 12 is 40. 40, interesting. So we're going to work out today what would be Tony's performance on the whole dartboard, because we only looked at Tony so far if we allowed him or we gave him this sort of help that he only hit the 20 segment, and we found that he had this crazy average score of 75.6. But what I'd like to do today is just take you through some very simple steps. Hopefully it will not be a long video. I promise I'll try to keep this concise. We'll work out what is the average score that Tony or a blindfold player would get throwing darts at the dartboard. You could even imagine this as a beginner playing in the dark with their left hand if they're right-handed. Similar to that. Let me turn the light out. Let me get my whiteboard. Okay. What's nice about this final video today is that we're going to be using many of the things that we have found. So we're going to be dusting off quite a few of the nuggets today to bring it all together. Our knowledge of the segments, our knowledge of the bull area, have to bring all that together to work this out properly, and we're going to get an exact figure for the average score of a blindfold player on the dartboard. So you can see I've arranged the whiteboard today. We're first of all going to do what would you get from the average score of the segments part of the board, but then we have to look at the bull area separately, and then we'll combine these and get the average score for the whole board. So let's just pretend first, just for the sake of argument, that we're only letting Tony hit the segments, but he can hit any of the 20 segments with the same chance, and let's work out what his average score from that would be. And the way we can think about this is to say, well, what's the average value of the segment? So the average of the segments, we want to take 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 19 and 20, and then divide by 20, and that would be the average value of all the segments. Okay, now there's two ways to do this. There's the straightforward way, which is you get a calculator or a piece of paper and you add up all 20 numbers and then you divide by 20. But there is a beautiful way of doing this, and there's actually a story. This is probably somewhat of an apocryphal story about the very famous mathematician from Germany called Karl Gauss. It is said that when he was a schoolboy, maybe 10 years old, the teacher wanted to get the class quiet for an hour so the teacher could do some marking, and he said to the class, add up all the numbers from 1 to 100. And then a minute later, Karl Gauss came up to the teacher's desk with the answer, and the teacher couldn't believe it. And then young Karl explained his reasoning, and it became a famous story. So how did Karl Gauss add up all the numbers from 1 to 100 in about a minute? Well, we have a similar problem here. We need to add up all the numbers from 1 to 20 and divide by 20, and there's a beautiful way to think about this. And we honor Karl Gauss. Okay, what we notice is that 1 and 20 added together give 21, And then we also notice that 2 and 19, when you add them together, give 21. So you get 21 plus 21 plus 21. So basically what you get is 10 pairs, each giving you 21. All right? And then you just have to divide by 20 for the average here. And so what you get from this then is 10 times 21 is 210. Is that right? 210 divided by 10 is 21, divided by 2 is, yeah, well actually this is a half, isn't it? So it's just a half times 21, which is 10 and a half. So that's just a beautiful little bit of mathematics there, that you can add up a string of numbers, a string of successive integers, by just doing it in pairs. So you just multiply the number of pairs by the value of each pair. Okay, so when you add up 1 to 100, you've got 50 pairs, each of which is 101. So you just multiply 101 by 50, and there's your answer. That's what young Carl did. Okay, so we know that the average value of the segment is 10 and a half. So that's the average value that Tony's going to get. But sometimes he's going to get doubles and sometimes he's going to get trebles. But we know the magic nugget that 1.26, this magic number, is your, what did we call it? Your enhancement. So if you throw random darts at a segment, you get the number value times 1.26. So the average score per dart then will be 1.26 times this 10.5. And that will be your average score per dart on all of the segments. And when you work that out, you get 13.23. I'm going to just keep a couple of decimal places here just in order to combine these more accurately, so we get a really exact answer at the end. So that's really easy. So if you throw random darts at the dartboard and you exclude the bullseye from the things that we know from our nugget and from young Carl Gauss in the late 1700s, we get that your average score per dart is 13.2 roughly. Now if you were to multiply that by 3, and we shouldn't do this by the way, but I just want to give you a sense of, let's imagine we thought this was the answer, we forgot about the bull, then your average visit, so I'm going to put this in square brackets and we're not going to use this, but it's just out of curiosity, if you multiply that by 3, you get 39.7. So that would be the answer you'd get if you forgot about the bullseye, or if you said, oh, he's never going to hit the bull, it doesn't matter, let's call the average 39.7, but it's not quite correct because we haven't taken into account the bullseye. Like we saw before this video started, Tony hit a 25 with his first dart. It can happen. So let's now turn to the bull. And again, we're going to use some nuggets here because we know that if Tony does hit the bull area, roughly 1 in 6 times he's going to get a 50, and 5 in 6 times he's going to get a 25. So his average per dart, okay, so let's call this average per dart, his APD. Average per dart on the segments is this, and then the average per dart in the bull area, well, you score 25, but only 5/6 of the time, and actually the exact number was 82.7%. And then you score a 50 the remainder of the time, which was 17.3%. Okay, so 5/6 of the time 25, 1/6 of the time 50, and then your average per dart, I couldn't even remember a 3-letter acronym for more than 2 seconds. That's what happens when you get to my age. Okay, and what do you find? This turns out to be 29. So not surprisingly, it's a lot higher than this, because this is an average hitting anywhere on the board except for the bull's area, right? And this is what happened. This is your average if you hit the bull area. So if you just had Tony throwing darts at the bull area, his average score would be 29.33 per dart, right? Quite a rich area for scoring, but obviously it's quite small. So now finally we just need to combine these. So we've kind of used one nugget here, we've used another nugget here because we know that the bull is 1/6 of the outer bull area. We're going to use one more nugget, which is how big is the bull area compared to the whole board. And remember, we spoke about that yesterday as well. So when we combine this, we say that per dart you've got 13.23, but if you hit the segments, now the segments is 100% of the board, take away the fraction of the board that is the bull area, and we work that out to be 0.91%. So just less than 1%, you probably remember that. So that's our nugget from yesterday. And then you score that higher score of 29.33 the remainder of the time, 0.91%. You get that higher, richer score per dart from the bull area. So you can work all of this out, and what you find is that your average score per dart then for the whole board is 13.38. So that's an exact, I mean, you know, up to 1 or 2 decimal places, but that's exactly calculated average per dart for the whole board, right? Calculated using 3 of the nuggets from our Secrets of the Dartboard series. Okay, so only with all of these nice little things that we found can you bring them all together to answer an interesting question. What does a complete beginner or a blindfold player score on the dartboard? And the answer is 13.4 or 13.38 points per dart. Okay, so what I want to do is just take this away, and I'm going to take that number now and multiply it by 3 because I actually want the per visit. All right, so average per visit will be 3 times that 13.38. And this gives us our final answer then, because we normally express averages in darts as per visit, per 3 darts. And we get the final answer of 40.1. Okay. And that's kind of our final nugget for this series, is that 40.1, so just a tad over 40, is what Tony or a blindfold or a complete beginner player in the dark will score. Okay, and it's interesting to compare it to the, I would say, the more kind of like naive answer, which is saying, well, let's ignore the bullseye, okay, of 39.7. This actually, including the bull, just knocks that average over 40, which psychologically is a really big deal. Because if you think that a blindfold player is kind of hitting in the 30s, it makes you feel okay. But to my mind, if you know that the actual result is that a blindfold player hits 40.1, psychologically that's like, oh, that's a bad feeling. Because all those times that I hit 20, 20 and then a single and then a 1, or all those times I hit 25 and 1, you know, or I hit 20, treble 5, treble 1. So all those 26s and 36s and 38s and 41s, 45s, that's like I'm trying my best, and I am a blindfold player. I might as well just be doing a Tony and throwing a 25, a 3 and a treble 4 to get 40. That's, you know, that was a joke shot this before we started, just to say this is kind of one of the shots that contributes to Tony's average and happens to have the value of the average as well. So there you go. I think that's quite an important result to remember. Another nugget, that even if you're a very, very good club player who averages 60, if you had like a mean friend, they would say, oh yeah, well done, you're doing 50% better than blindfold, well done, damning you with faint praise. Even a like top sort of, I don't know, like county level player, maybe averages 80, I'm not quite sure, they might have a mean friend that says, oh well done, you're averaging twice as much as a blindfold player. Those statements are really hard statements to accept, but it's a fact. So I want to do one more thing before we end today's video, which is just to answer a couple of funny questions. So let me just take everything away first of all, just to have a completely clean dartboard. But I want to answer two questions, and I'm not going to calculate these, I'm just going to give you the answer. But it's how many hours or how long does it take Tony to get a 180 on the whole board? And how long does it take Tony to get the hardest shot of all in darts, which is 150 with 3 bulls? How long will it take Tony to get that shot? Okay. And if you remember, for the 180 for Tony, if he was just on the 20s, we just let him only throw at the 20 segment. It took him 8.1 hours to get a 180. And so we can actually directly use this result to get how long it would take him to get a 180 on the whole board. Okay, I won't go through the calculation, but crudely speaking, now that he's got 20 different segments, each dart only has 1/20th of the chance of hitting the 20. So you can take this 8.1 hours and multiply it by 20, and then multiply it by 20, and then multiply it by 20, and you'll almost get the right answer. You're not quite taking into account the bull, which just gives a 1% shift in the answer, but that's approximately what you get. I've done it exactly, and here's what you get, assuming 15 seconds per visit, okay? So I'm basing Tony's speed on my speed. We all know that Tony throws a lot faster than that on the computer, 100 million a second, but let's assume that one visit takes him 15 seconds. Then on the whole board, then, it takes him, you can't really express it in hours actually, it's roughly 16 million visits. And it works out to be 7.6 years. So we can be a bit smug now with Tony that if he throws every 15 seconds a visit without a break, no toilet breaks, no sandwich, no cup of tea, just constantly, after 7.6 years, he will have a 50% chance of having hit a 180. So 7.5 years. So when I say how long does it take, I mean to have a 50% chance of doing it, because he might do it on his first visit, or it might take him 10 times longer than this, because probabilities are like that, but to have a 50% chance, he needs 8 hours if he's just aiming at the 20s, or he needs 7.5 years if he's aiming at the whole board. And then finally, the hardest shot in darts, a 150 with 3 bulls, that is 175 million visits. Oh my goodness, this board is tilting dangerously here. And that works out to be 83.4 years. So if you do get annoyed with beginner players like doing well against you, because remember the first series on my channel was about how beginners, if they aim at the 1 segment, can do really well against actually quite reasonable players. So if that annoys you, do feel good about the fact that it will take them over 7 years with no toilet breaks to get a 180. And it will take them a lifetime if they eat healthily and do plenty of exercise, which they won't be, by the way, because they're just throwing darts all the time. So they need very good genes then to get to 83 and 175 million visits to get that 3 bullseyes to get a 150. So we can feel a bit better about Tony when we look at these really hard shots. So he's not so good at the extremes, but on average he's a pretty darned robust player with a very stable average of 40.1. So if our averages start to be in the 40s, if we are, say, an intermediate player, we have to really buck up our ideas because we're basically verging into blindfold territory. So with that then, we have come to the end of all the results in this Secrets of the Dartboard series. Now I'm thinking to make a short video of just summarizing the nuggets, and that's for viewers who won't have the patience to watch over 2 hours of footage where we've essentially motivated and derived all these nuggets. I might make that summary video in the next couple of days. I'm going to take a short break just to attend to domestic things which I might possibly be getting some heat on, and come back with a new series. I haven't quite decided yet what the new series is on. It might be like something to do with technique. It might be something to do with left-handed darts. Okay, if you have suggestions, please let me know. And just one final word, I will be putting some shorts, they call them, on YouTube, just to try and promote the channel to people who haven't visited yet. So if you're a loyal subscriber and you've seen all of this, I do apologize that you'll be getting notified of new videos, but they might just be these shorts, which will be little clips of things we've already seen. So I do apologize for that, because I don't want to, you know, distract you with what you think might be new videos if it's just stuff you've seen before. But I just want to try and use those to bring in more people to the channel so they can enjoy the more mellow, longer videos where we actually get to understand stuff and instead of just having stuff told us that we are supposed to believe, because that's not what this channel's about. If I can't back up a statement on this channel, shame on me. Okay, so with that, thank you again everyone for your support. I hope everyone's doing well as summer is slowly ending here, although for our southern hemisphere visitors, they might be thinking, oh, winter is slowly ending, yippee. And 3 darts at the oche, make them count, and I'll see you next time.